hate all of the getting benched, the funny lineups. They got her playing small forward. It did not matter. You know why? You can't stop God's work. It was written. It was written. This is God's work. Caitlin Clark.
The MVP award still went to Caitlin Clark. After an 8-month absence from competitive basketball, after opening the tournament with 3 straight games off the bench, and after a coaching staff continued to shuffle the lineup under intense public scrutiny, Clark nevertheless emerged as the tournament's most outstanding player. By the end of 5 games, the debate had effectively ended. Those who questioned whether she could return at an elite level were left without a compelling case. The result was clear. Clark's comeback was not merely successful, it was authoritative.
They big mad. They are flaming right now. Caitlin Clark, in her return to basketball, like 8 months off, all these injuries, all of this stuff, the girl shows up and wins MVP.
It is important to frame the context accurately. Clark had been away from competitive basketball for 8 full months. This was not a routine off-season gap, nor a short-term injury absence. A layoff of that length typically affects conditioning, timing, rhythm, and the instinctive feel that comes only through live competition. Even the most accomplished players often require time to reacclimate. Concerns about rust, adjustment, and readiness were entirely reasonable. Clark answered those concerns emphatically. She led the entire FIBA Women's World Cup qualifying tournament in assists, averaged 11.6 points per game as Team USA's second leading scorer, led the team in efficiency, posted the best plus-minus on the roster, and finished the event with the MVP trophy.
See here, standing in front of us, and the TISO MVP of the...
That is why this performance registered as more than a standard return from injury. For the first 3 games, critics had every reason to remain skeptical. They could point to the 8-month absence. They could point to her reserve role. They could also point to the coaching staff's decision not to start her as evidence that she had not yet fully regained form. The argument was easy to make. Perhaps Clark was still working her way back, and perhaps the tournament's top individual honor would go to a player who had been in continuous competition. Once the tournament unfolded, however, those arguments lost their force. The evidence on the floor told a different story. The strongest case began with Clark's playmaking. Averaging 6.4 assists per game and leading the tournament in that category is not a statistical accident. It reflects advanced court vision, rapid decision-making, and the ability to consistently create quality scoring opportunities for teammates. That level of facilitation is a specialized skill, and Clark demonstrated that it remained fully intact despite the long absence and her initial role off the bench. Paige Buchers did not finish in the top 3 in assists. Kelsey Plum did not lead the field in that category. Rhyne Howard was a productive scorer, but her playmaking output did not approach Clark's level. Across the full player pool, Clark stood alone at the top, and that alone gave the MVP discussion a straightforward conclusion.
Caitlin Clark is officially the MVP of the FIBA Women's World Cup qualifier tournament that was just held in Puerto Rico. Team USA went undefeated, and it's kind of crazy because Caitlin Clark actually only started 1 game in this entire tournament, but clearly she had the greatest impact. The coach at times was also playing her in the 3-4 position, which is so wild. She's a true point guard, and literally everyone does better when she is running the point. And she led the team in assists per game with 6.4 per game. And she also led the team in efficiency at a 14.6, which is something that FIBA uses, the WNBA and NBA don't. But essentially, it's a math equation that figures out your efficiency on the court.
The plus-minus figure further reinforced that conclusion. Clark finished the tournament at plus 104 across 5 games, the most telling measure of her overall impact. In practical terms, Team USA was dramatically better with her on the court than without her. This was not based on a 1-game sample. It was sustained over the entire tournament. 3 of those games began with Clark outside the starting lineup, while the coaching staff experimented with combinations, rotations, and offensive structures. Yet the pattern remained consistent. The more involved Clark became, the better Team USA performed. Her first start, against New Zealand, resulted in a 55-point victory, the second largest margin of the tournament. At that point, the relationship between Clark's offensive control and Team USA's highest level of performance was no longer speculative. It was supported by 5 consecutive box scores. That made it increasingly difficult to argue that Team USA's dominance could be explained solely by roster talent without acknowledging Clark's individual influence. Her impact was measurable and sustained. The comeback element also deserves proper weight. Returning after 8 months away is not only a physical test but also a mental one. Timing, processing speed, comfort under defensive pressure, and confidence in transition are sharpened by game action, not by training alone. No rehabilitation program can fully reproduce live competition. Clark also appeared physically refreshed. She looked leaner, quicker, and more fluid than she had late last season. There were signs that the time away had not simply restored her, but potentially sharpened key aspects of her game. Her deep shooting returned. Her ball handling creativity returned. Her long outlet passing and transition creation returned. All of it surfaced in her first 5 competitive games back, against experienced international opposition, while she was still operating within an unsettled rotation. That broader context gave the MVP award significance beyond the raw numbers. The fan vote subplot added another layer to the tournament, though ultimately not to the official decision. FIBA conducted a public poll to gauge who should be named MVP of the qualifying section. Clark led early before the vote totals began to shift in suspicious fashion, prompting allegations of automated voting and widespread debate online. The credibility of the poll quickly came into question. In the end, however, that controversy proved irrelevant. The official MVP was not determined by public voting but by performance on the court across 5 games. When the final decision was announced, Clark was named MVP of the FIBA Women's Basketball World Cup qualifying tournament, and there was little serious dispute. No alternative candidate presented a stronger all-around case. Buchers had impressive moments and showed promising chemistry with Clark, particularly in the New Zealand game, where the 2 guards complemented one another effectively. Still, Buchers did not rank among the tournament leaders in assists, did not lead Team USA in efficiency, and did not post the kind of on-court impact reflected in Clark's plus-minus numbers. Howard also entered the conversation on the strength of her scoring, but that argument weakened when examined more closely. A notable share of Howard's offense was created through Clark's facilitation. When one player is generating a significant number of another's scoring opportunities, the value of the creator becomes difficult to overlook. The opening game offered a clear example of that dynamic. In that game, Howard scored 4 more points than Clark, but more than half of those points came on shots created directly by Clark's assists. Even the player of the game discussion from that opener could reasonably be revisited. By the end of the tournament, however, the larger conclusion was unmistakable. Awarding MVP to anyone other than Clark would have been difficult to justify. Team USA advanced to the World Cup in Berlin with a perfect 5-0 record, and the tournament provided the coaching staff with valuable evidence about which lineup combinations were most effective and which led to a slower, less coherent style of play. Clark's MVP award now sits within that evidence as a formal recognition of her value. The player who led the team in assists, efficiency, and plus-minus made a persuasive case to be in the starting lineup from the outset of the World Cup rather than being used later as a rotation adjustment. Predictably, critics may now shift the terms of the debate. Some will argue that it was only a qualifying tournament, that the level of competition was not elite, or that large margins of victory reduced the significance of individual performances. Those arguments may persist, but the record will not change. Clark returned from an 8-month absence, spent 3 games coming off the bench, played 5 games, and still produced the best playmaking numbers in the tournament while winning MVP. For a player already regarded by many as the premier guard in women's basketball, it was a return that carried both statistical weight and symbolic force. The next stage is Berlin in September. Based on what Team USA showed in Puerto Rico, and based on the authority of Clark's performance, expectations will only grow from here. If you want, I can also turn this into an even sharper ESPN-style sports article version or a formal newspaper column version.